The lands between are a place where logic goes to die, where you can fight a two-headed dragon made of hands, befriend a talking jar filled with human remains, and discover that the moon is actually a cosmic horror that wants to marry you. Welcome to Elden Ring, where FromSoftware took every weird fantasy concept they could think of and cranked it up to 11. You've probably spent hundreds of hours in this world dodging meteors, getting invaded by players with names like "Let Me Solo Her," and dying to the same boss 17 times in a row. But have you ever stopped to think about just how absolutely bizarre the lore really is? Because trust me, the deeper you dig into this rabbit hole, the weirder it gets. I'm talking about a world where fingers are gods, where a woman turned herself into a scarlet flower because she was too proud to lose a fight, and where the most feared warrior in the realm is a tiny redhead who learned her swordsmanship from a blind man. This isn't your typical fantasy setting where dragons hoard gold and princesses need rescuing. This is a fever dream wrapped in medieval aesthetics and served with a side of cosmic horror. Today we're going to explore the most mind-bending, reality-defying, and downright strange pieces of lore that make Elden Ring the beautiful nightmare it is. We're going to unpack mysteries that have kept the community theorizing for months, examine characters whose backstories sound like they were written during a particularly intense fever, and dive into concepts that make Dark Souls look straightforward by comparison. From the two fingers that supposedly guide your destiny but might actually be cosmic parasites, to the outer gods that treat reality like their personal sandbox. We're going to break down the lore that makes seasoned Souls veterans scratch their heads and wonder what Miyazaki was thinking. And trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at those seemingly innocent stone imp statues the same way again. But here's the thing about Elden Ring's lore. It's not just weird for the sake of being weird. Every bizarre element serves a purpose, every strange character has a reason for existing, and every mind-bending concept connects to a larger tapestry of storytelling that's both beautiful and terrifying. The weirdness isn't a bug, it's a feature, and it's what makes this world so captivating. So whether you're a lore enthusiast who's already read every item description 3 times, or you're someone who just wants to understand why that giant hand spider thing is shooting magic at you, this is your guide to the strangest corners of the lands between. We're going to start with something that seems simple on the surface, but gets progressively more disturbing the more you think about it. Let's talk about the Erd Tree. You know, that massive glowing tree that dominates the skyline and serves as the central symbol of the Golden Order. Seems straightforward enough, right? It's a big tree, it's pretty, it gives off light, and apparently it's where souls go when they die. But here's where things get interesting. The Erd Tree isn't actually a tree at all. What you're looking at is essentially a massive parasite that's been feeding on the corpses of an entire civilization for thousands of years. The roots of this thing extend deep underground, wrapping around the bodies of the dead and slowly consuming them to fuel its eternal glow. Those beautiful golden leaves? They're made from the processed remains of every person who's ever died in the lands between. And here's the kicker. Everyone in this world thinks this is completely normal. They've built their entire religion around worshipping what is essentially a cosmic vampire tree. The Golden Order, the dominant faith that governs the lands between, is based on the idea that being consumed by this thing after death is the highest honor you can achieve. It's like discovering that heaven is actually a digestive system. But wait, it gets weirder. The Erd tree isn't native to this world either. It's an invasive species that was planted by an alien entity called the Greater Will, which brings us to our next topic, the Outer Gods. These beings exist outside of reality as we understand it, and they treat entire worlds like chess pieces in some incomprehensible cosmic game. The Greater Will isn't the only player in this game. There's also the Frenzied Flame, which wants to burn everything back to primordial chaos. There's the Formless Mother, who feeds on blood and wounds. There's the Rot God, who spreads disease and decay. And then there's the Dark Moon, which might be the most mysterious of all because nobody really knows what it wants, but it's definitely planning something. These aren't gods in the traditional sense. They're more like cosmic forces that operate on a scale so vast that human comprehension breaks down trying to process them. They don't have bodies. They don't have personalities as we understand them. And they certainly don't care about individual mortals. They're more like natural disasters with intelligence, and they're constantly trying to reshape reality according to their own alien logic. The really unsettling part is that these outer gods don't directly interfere with the world. Instead, they work through intermediaries, beings who have been touched by their influence and transformed into something beyond human understanding. These intermediaries are called Empyreans, and they're probably the most tragic figures in the entire story. Take Melania, for example. She's this incredibly skilled warrior who's never lost a battle, but she's been slowly consumed by scarlet rot since birth. The rot isn't just a disease, it's a manifestation of an outer god's influence, and it's been eating away at her body and mind for her entire life. She's simultaneously one of the most powerful beings in the world and one of the most pitiable. Then there's Miquella, her twin brother who's been cursed with eternal youth. Sounds like a blessing, right? Except he's been stuck in the body of a child while possessing the mind of an adult genius. He's spent centuries trying to find a way to break the curses that plague his family, eventually resorting to building a massive tree of his own and cocooning himself inside it in an attempt to transcend his physical limitations. The thing is, neither of these curses are random. They're the result of their mother, Queen Marika, being chosen as an Empyrean by the Greater Will. When an outer god selects someone as their representative, it doesn't just affect that person. It affects their entire bloodline for generations. The children of Empyreans are born with what the game calls afflictions, which are really just different ways of saying they've been marked by cosmic horror from birth. This brings us to one of the most disturbing implications in the entire game. The idea that free will might be completely illusory. If your destiny is determined by the whims of incomprehensible alien entities before you're even born, if your thoughts and actions are influenced by cosmic forces beyond your understanding, then what does it mean to be human? The game never gives you a clear answer to this question, but it does provide some hints. The Tarnished, that's you, the player character, are described as beings who have been stripped of the Erd Tree's grace. In other words, you're someone who's been cut off from the influence of the greater will. This might be why you're able to make choices that other characters can't. Why you can challenge the established order in ways that seem impossible for everyone else. But even this apparent freedom comes with a cost. Without the guidance of the Erd Tree's grace, you're essentially stumbling through a world that operates according to rules you don't understand, making decisions based on incomplete information, and hoping that you're not just playing into the hands of some other outer god that you haven't even discovered yet. And speaking of things you haven't discovered yet, we've barely scratched the surface of the weirdness that permeates every corner of this world. We haven't talked about the implications of the shattering, the event that broke reality itself into fragments. We haven't explored the true nature of the demigods and why they're all completely insane. We haven't delved into the mystery of what happened to the original inhabitants of the lands between, or why there are so many different types of humanoid creatures living in what's supposedly a single kingdom. We haven't even begun to unpack the nightmare that is the Crucible, the primordial form of the Erd Tree that existed before the Golden Order sanitized everything. The Crucible wasn't content with just consuming the dead. It actively mutated the living, creating chimeric beings that combined human intelligence with animal instincts and plant-like regeneration. The knights who served it didn't just wear armor, they grew it from their own bodies, sprouting horns and scales and wings as naturally as you might grow hair. The Golden Order spent centuries trying to erase all traces of the Crucible's influence, declaring its mutations to be omens of evil. But here's the thing. The Crucible wasn't evil at all. It was just chaotic, unpredictable, and fundamentally incompatible with the rigid order that the greater will wanted to impose. The so-called Omens that the Golden Order persecuted weren't monsters, they were just people who retained traces of humanity's original form. This persecution created an entire underclass of beings who were literally driven underground. The sewers beneath Lanedale aren't just waste management systems. They're refugee camps for the remnants of a civilization that was systematically erased. The Omen twins, Morgott and Mog, are perfect examples of this. They're both incredibly powerful, highly intelligent, and completely devoted to their own versions of order. But because they were born with horns and the ability to manipulate blood, they were branded as abominations and locked away in the deepest dungeons of the capital. The really twisted part is that their father, Godfrey, was once blessed by the Crucible himself. Those golden spectral beasts that appear during his boss fight. That's Crucible energy. The first Elden Lord was literally empowered by the same force that his descendants would be persecuted for carrying. It's like discovering that your grandfather was a war hero for the exact same qualities that make you a social outcast. But the Crucible's influence goes deeper than just physical mutations. It represents a fundamental truth about the nature of life itself, that growth and change are inherently chaotic processes that can't be controlled or predicted. The Golden Order's attempt to impose rigid categories on existence is essentially a war against the basic principles of evolution and adaptation. This brings us to one of the most unsettling characters in the entire game, Rykard. Lord of Blasphemy. Most players remember him as the giant snake boss who talks about devouring gods. But his transformation is actually a perfect metaphor for what happens when someone fully embraces the chaos that the Golden Order tried to suppress. Rykard didn't just feed himself to a giant serpent. He became the serpent. His consciousness merged with an ancient creature that existed long before the Erd Tree, creating a hybrid being that represents pure, unrestrained consumption. The family residence isn't just his home, it's his body, a living mansion that digests everything that enters it. The walls pulse with organic life, the floors are made of flesh, and the very air is thick with digestive enzymes. The most disturbing part is that Rykard sees this transformation as liberation. He's not a monster who lost his humanity. He's a revolutionary who deliberately abandoned it. In his mind, the only way to truly oppose the Golden Order is to become something so fundamentally different that their categories of good and evil simply don't apply anymore. This philosophy of transformation through consumption extends throughout his entire domain. The Volcano Manor isn't just a base of operations for assassins. It's a digestive system designed to break down the established order from within. Every knight who joins their cause undergoes a gradual transformation, slowly losing their human form as they're integrated into Rykard's collective consciousness. The recusants aren't just rebels, they're antibodies in a living system dedicated to dismantling civilization itself. They target specific individuals not because of personal grudges, but because those people represent structural elements of the Golden Order that need to be dissolved. It's terrorism as biological function, revolution as digestion. And here's where things get really weird. Rykard might actually be right. The Golden Order is revealed to be fundamentally unsustainable, a system that can only maintain itself by consuming everything around it. The Erd Tree's roots don't just feed on the dead, they actively prevent new life from emerging. The cycle of death and rebirth that should be natural has been perverted into a one-way flow of energy toward a cosmic parasite. The shattering wasn't just a political crisis. It was reality's immune response to an invasive system that was slowly killing the world. Queen Marika didn't destroy the Elden Ring because she went insane. She did it because she finally understood what the Greater Will was really doing to her people. The Golden Order she had spent millennia building was actually a slow-motion apocalypse disguised as eternal prosperity. But even this act of rebellion was anticipated by the outer gods. The shattering created fragments of reality that could be claimed by different entities, turning the lands between into a battleground for competing cosmic influences. Each demigod who claimed a great rune became a focal point for different aspects of existence: war, death, knowledge, decay, rebirth. The really horrifying implication is that this might have been the plan all along. The Greater Will didn't just want to control one world, it wanted to fragment reality itself, creating multiple parallel dimensions that could each be harvested for different resources. The lands between as we know them might just be one small piece of a vast multi-dimensional farming operation. This is why the endings of the game are so unsettling. No matter which path you choose, You're essentially deciding which cosmic horror gets to reshape reality according to its own incomprehensible agenda. The Age of Stars sounds peaceful until you realize you're handing control over to an entity that exists in the cold void between worlds. The frenzied flame ending promises to burn away all suffering, but it does so by burning away existence itself. Even the default ending, where you simply repair the Elden Ring and restore the Golden Order, is deeply problematic. You're not fixing anything. You're just restarting the cycle of cosmic parasitism that caused all these problems in the first place. The Erd Tree will continue to consume the dead. The outer gods will continue to manipulate reality, and eventually someone else will have to make the same impossible choice you're making now. The game presents this as heroism, but it's really just damage control on a cosmic scale. You're not saving the world. You're choosing which method of slow-motion apocalypse seems least objectionable. And the most disturbing part is that there might not be a right answer, because the fundamental structure of reality itself has been compromised by forces that operate on scales beyond human comprehension.